To me, NBA Jam on Fire Edition is not only the best game in the NBA Jam series, but the best arcade basketball game, period. I don't say that lightly. The original NBA Jam is a classic that holds up superbly. Tournament Edition was a worthy follow-up, and for a long time, my favourite game in the series. NBA Hangtime is fantastic too, and in my view, the true successor to the original series, rather than Acclaim's titles after they acquired the name from Midway. There are other strong releases, and EA's 2010 reboot was a fine game in its own right. However, On Fire Edition, released on Xbox Live and the PlayStation Store back in 2011, has a compelling case here. That's because it managed to improve on the genre in a way that previous titles hadn't been able to, including its immediate predecessor. The 2010 reboot of NBA Jam was a fun game, indeed one of the best in the lineage since Midway's run of titles. As I said when I profiled it, it's an admirably faithful remake or reboot of the series. To that point, of course, it replicated some of the long-standing issues with NBA Jam and other arcade titles. Gameplay could be repetitive, with the challenge mostly coming from rubber band AI. Its modes, in particular the boss battles, were creative, but the classic campaign could be dry. It's enjoyable, but there was something missing. NBA Jam on Fire Edition changed that. Although it's very similar to Jam 2010 on the sticks, it feels more polished. The two sprint controls were now on the left and right triggers, and could be used together to perform razzle-dazzle shots and dribble moves, as well as poke shoves. Tag mode returned, allowing us to switch players. We could also now instruct CPU teammates to shove or go for an alley-oop. The biggest improvement by far, however, was the adoption of real AI, tech borrowed from the Fight Night series. By recording our inputs, the AI would actually evolve and effectively anticipate and counter your moves and strategies. In this way, real AI addressed the aforementioned issue of gameplay that could be repetitive and rife with contrived difficulty. If you're an experienced NBA Jam gamer, you know what I mean. Shove for the steal, run it up for a dunk or three-pointer, rinse and repeat. After a while, the comeback logic kicks in, and the game tips the balance in the favour of your opponent, which can be absolutely brutal when playing against the CPU. It's still fun and suitably challenging, but compared to sim titles, the gameplay doesn't feel as varied, at least when playing solo. It's an issue that's affected basically every arcade basketball game until NBA Jam on Fire Edition came along. Real AI meant that you couldn't just spam the same strategies over and over again. If you always ran towards the far side of the court on an inbounds pass, the AI would be ready to knock you down. If you ran up the floor and fired for three from the top of the key time and time again, they'd get wise to that as well. The more you played the game, the more the real AI learned about your playstyle and how to counter it. It was still quite forgiving on the easier difficulty levels, but on harder settings, the AI would be tough and rough. There's still some degree of rubber banding, but you'd open yourself up to the CPU's comebacks through ineffective and repetitive strategies. In addition to new moves and enhancing the feel, fluidity, and AI, the gameplay in NBA Jam on Fire Edition benefited from the retention of series staples. Incredible dunks, backboard shattering, getting on fire after 3 consecutive non-goaltended baskets, protecting a streak of fire by goaltending, enhanced abilities and goaltending while on fire, fire going out up to 4 consecutive baskets or an opponent scoring, alley-oops, 3 alley-oops in a row for team fire that lasts for 25 seconds, basic spin and crossover moves, ratings that are effective without being restrictive, and no infractions aside from shot clock violations, and goaltending when not on fire. It's exactly what a sequel or enhanced edition should be. The core aspects that worked were retained, while elements that didn't work, or could be better, were replaced or improved as needed. This was an aim that extended beyond gameplay as well, as OFE's campaign mode was likewise overhauled. While Classic Campaign had been a respectable spin on the traditional arcade ladder, it made the mistake of locking us into using a single team. The best part of the ladder in the original NBA Jam games was the ability to use different teams if you preferred. This kept things fresh, and also allowed you to select the most advantageous matchup for your next opponent. That vital flexibility was greatly missed in Classic Campaign. The Remix Tour was a creative idea, and a suitable reward for completing Classic Campaign for the first time, and its boss battles provided a stimulating challenge. Unfortunately, it suffered the same inflexibility by forcing you to stick with a single team. Road Trip changed all of that by combining Classic Campaign and the Remix Tour and allowing us to select our team for every game. Rather than running through a set schedule, gamers could also jump all over the map, quite literally, facing any team of their choosing at any time. This level of freedom opened up the mode, without compromising structure. Road Trip tasked us with defeating every team in the league, with each team featuring a series of challenges: Bronze, Silver, Gold, and Platinum. Each challenge must be defeated to unlock the next, with the Platinum challenges unlocking after clearing the Gold challenge for every team in a division. Again, this afforded the freedom to choose a starting point and jump around like the Remix Tour, while retaining a semblance of structure and providing incentive to aim for 100% completion. You could play through Road Trip in order, or hop around and circle back to a game as designed. Personally, I prefer to change opponents and divisions every few games. Changing things up was the name of the game in Road Trip after all. The Bronze challenges were all straightforward: classic NBA Jam action against a current duo on the easiest difficulty level. Silver and Gold challenges raised the difficulty setting, and also threw out a new pair of opponents, often featuring at least one legend. They also took inspiration from the Remix Tour, utilising gameplay modifiers. These included everything from 1s and 2s, 3-pointers counting for 4 points while dunks are only worth 1, single quarters with continuous gameplay, one shot to catch fire that never runs out, and even mini-players as the gold challenge for the Detroit Pistons. On top of the increasing difficulty levels, these gameplay modifiers kept even the most experienced NBA Jam gamers on their toes. Shrinking the players in the Pistons challenge altered the jump animations and timing, actually making perimeter shots easier to block. With continuous gameplay, you had to be quick in retrieving the ball, otherwise the CPU would score a flurry of baskets. With 4-point baskets, leads could disappear in a flash, all the more reason to never give up or get too cocky. Of course, straightforward 2v2 games on a higher difficulty level and against a different duo were fun too, and could catch you off guard with a tough challenge. And then there are the Platinum challenges. Those pitted us against the Jam bots, which turned the Relay Eye concept on its head for the ultimate showdown. The Jam bots utilised the strategies that the game had been observing us use, and threw them right back in our faces. All the aggressive play and cheap tricks that we'd been using to dominate the CPU were now our problem to contend with. I know that some people didn't like the Jam bots, but I thought it was a clever idea that aptly demonstrated the power of Relay Eye while ramping up the challenge. After playing through all of the NBA team challenges, Road Trip ends with a showdown against the Beastie Boys. There's another fantastic aspect of Road Trip that makes it the greatest campaign mode in arcade basketball games. It supports solo play and local co-op, and when the service was still active, online co-op as well. Not only that, but you weren't locked into any of those options. A friend could jump in at any time, or you could continue the campaign alone if they weren't available. Through the use of Parsec and the Xbox companion app, Dee and I have even been able to play co-op without the servers. The depth, flexibility, challenge, and overall fun of Road Trip make it a blast to this day. Unlockables and additional in-game challenges also keep things interesting. Admittedly, there are a couple of drawbacks to Road Trip. There's only one data file, so you can only play through it once. That is to say, you can replay any of the games you've unlocked as many times as you like, but there's no way to start over from scratch without deleting your saved data. Also, your mileage may vary here, but more of the silver and gold challenges could have been remixed with gimmicks, rather than being straightforward games. The lack of boss battles dropped an interesting idea from the 2010 reboot, and games like Backboard Smash would have been fun too. At the end of the day though, NBA Jam on Fire Edition still boasts an amazing mode in Road Trip. The development team also did a fantastic job with content in NBA Jam on Fire Edition. It had to launch with final 2011 season rosters owing to the lockout, but it included a number of NBA legends. It also featured the Seattle Supersonics, with Sean Kemp, Gary Payton, and Daniel Schrempf, 4 EuroLeague teams, and a number of special squads including characters from other EA games, mascots, teams of the best dunkers, shooters, and EA cover players, even Santa Claus and the Honey Badgers. There were also privileges, extra basketballs, cosmetic items, and visual filters to unlock, either by completing challenges or buying them from the Jam store. It should be noted here that this functionality included the ability to buy additional Jam bugs to unlock players faster, as well as accelerated DLC that unlocked a ton of players immediately. At the same time, if you had a save file from NBA Jam 2010 present on your console, you were handed a ton of Jam bugs right out of the gate as a loyalty bonus. Playing through Road Trip also accrued a decent balance rather quickly, so there was little pressure to spend. Given that OFE was a digital-only title with a lower price point, I'm sure that many of us opted for the accelerator. I don't usually justify such practices, but it was before that nonsense truly got out of control. NBA Jam on Fire Edition did receive a few official roster updates, adding players such as Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, and Jeremy Lin. They also moved players to their new teams and adjusted a few ratings. While the roster updates were welcome, they did have the unfortunate side effect of leaving a few teams with unusual default duos. They were also meant to be more frequent, but after NBA Jam on Fire Edition was released, a majority of the development team was let go. Classic EA. Fortunately, it didn't prevent the release of those roster updates, but if not for EA's penny pinching, we might have had more in the way of post-release support, not to mention sequels. Speaking of what-ifs for NBA Jam on Fire Edition, in my interview with producer Cody Sawatsky, who sadly passed away in 2016, he revealed that there were plans for Create a Player, Create a Team, and a massive online tournament. Due to time constraints and other factors, they weren't able to become a reality. I didn't receive clearance to run those snippets in my interview way back in 2011, but I think I'm safe to let the cat out of the bag now. Obviously those would have been huge features that could have added even more longevity to the game, but it's understandable that they didn't make the cut, given that the game was released just a year after the 2010 reboot. Although there was no massive online tournament in NBA Jam on Fire Edition, it did support online play. The online arena featured a weekly ladder with global rankings, and your rank at the end of the week was added to your Jam card for bragging rights. Every Wednesday the online arena clock reset, resulting in a new opportunity to climb to the top of the ladder. Winning arena games and completing arena-specific challenges also meant opportunities to earn more Jam bucks and unlock content sooner. All in all, NBA Jam on Fire Edition was a fantastic arcade basketball title, whether you preferred playing online, offline, solo, or multiplayer. And of course, it retained that classic NBA Jam vibe, from the aesthetics to the music to the outstanding commentary of Tim Kitzrow. As I've said before, Tim's iconic voiceover work is an essential part of NBA Jam's atmosphere, and he has plenty of great lines that added to the excitement and humour of On Fire Edition's gameplay. Once again, I'll plug the interview that I conducted with him on our podcast, link in the description. Chatting with him was one of my all-time favourite moments of covering basketball games for the NLSC, and I love how he continues to fly the flag for the series to this day. It simply wouldn't be NBA Jam without Mr. Boom Shakalaka. I will mention a couple of minor gripes and nitpicks. Like the 2010 reboot, On Fire Edition doesn't have the injury levels that were added in Tournament Edition. This means there's less incentive to substitute unless you picked a bad matchup, and the CPU will never alter its lineup. Again, some of the road trip challenges could have made more use of the gameplay modifiers, and I do miss the minigames and boss battles from the previous release. Ultimately, they aren't game-breaking issues that stand in the way of fun, but they're worth noting. Had the game received further sequels, or more in the way of live service content and DLC, those issues might have been addressed. As much affection and nostalgia as I have for the original Midway games, especially Tournament Edition, On Fire Edition has become my favourite NBA Jam title. The implementation of Relay I and Road Trip make it a strong contender for the best game in the series, and the best arcade basketball game to date. It captured the spirit of the original games perfectly, while featuring refreshing updates. More than simply adding contemporary players, it took the best features from classic NBA Jam games, keeping what worked and updating concepts as necessary, while discarding what no longer worked and adding features that took the NBA Jam experience to a new level. Relay I also meant that the game could evolve constantly and organically. As such, the gameplay is tailored for everyone, while being grounded by strong mechanics and design. As the AI learns from us, and anyone else we play with, the challenge of the top difficulty level is continually sculpted. Between road trip, unlockables, and multiplayer capabilities, the game had plenty to keep you hooked, and coming back again years later. There's the right amount of historical content and wacky silliness among the unlockables to keep things fun. Hitting 75 razzle-dazzle shots unlocks a jam card icon featuring Cody's cat wearing a tuxedo, to give just one example. While the depth of modes and content is important, gameplay is paramount, and that's why NBA Jam on Fire Edition still holds up today. The best NBA Jam games all feature the right combination of fast-paced action, balance between offense and defense, and polished mechanics. On Fire Edition ticks all of those boxes, and then throws in the innovations of Relay I and Road Trip, along with all of its content, online play, and updates, for what I deem to be the ultimate NBA Jam experience. Making it a cheaper digital-only release through Xbox Live and the PlayStation Store was also a brilliant marketing strategy, though it's unfortunate for collectors all these years later. To that point, NBA Jam on Fire Edition is no longer available. Online support was unexpectedly reactivated in 2022, allowing gamers to download the updated rosters and even play online if they could find a matchup. The service was shut up again in January 2023, presumably for good. However, if you do have the game, it's one that you can still play for hours on end. It truly was built to last, and if EA has any interest in jumping back into the basketball gaming space, an updated version of On Fire Edition would be a great place to start. As for our community, thanks to John Z1, we're finally seeing some mods for NBA Jam on Fire Edition breathing new life into a masterpiece. As popular as NBA 2K is, there's room in the basketball gaming space for an arcade title. The NBA Playgrounds games were respectable efforts, but they fell short of NBA Jam and NBA Street in a number of ways, from balance to mechanics to the handling of their rosters. NBA Jam on Fire Edition had a high bar to clear with its predecessors, and yet it succeeded in spectacular fashion. I'd love to get a new NBA Jam game one day, but for now, I'm glad we got OFE. EA Sports definitely faltered with the NBA Live series over the years, but when it came to NBA Jam, they were able to follow up the great 2010 reboot with a game that was absolutely on fire.